the original piece that I wrote was called um, Republican Fuck Pigs. Here's Why You Want Submissive Women. Talking about the whole weaponization of vaginal control and why there's misogyny and shit. And so when I revisited the article and I started to do a redo of the article, I was examining the intersectionality of toxic masculinity and how it relates to the intersectionality of the trans community.
Yeah.
And so the thing that I thought about was, if I talked about this, who would I want to talk to about this? I would want to talk to somebody who is cis and heterosexual and has an opinion about toxic masculinity. And then I would want to talk to a gay person and or a lesbian who has an understanding of toxic masculinity, and then go through there's like the established 10 problems of why toxic masculinity exists, and then talk about ways to solve that. Interestingly enough, the 10 problems, the 10 psychological issues that come about as a result of why toxic masculinity happens from a, a cisgendered perspective is not at all different from how it happens intersectionally from a trans perspective. And so the piece that I didn't have, or the understanding that I didn't have, I was a queer gay person at a time in my life before I was a trans person. But I didn't understand that later, which meant I would have to involve Brandon in this discussion because there's elements to that in my rewrite of that article that I did not understand, and I did not want to publish until I did understand what those were. And so there's 10 points. We can talk through each of the 10 points, and then you can give me your opinions.
Okay.
Or tell me what you think about it. So the first point is very simple. The real man gatekeeping bullshit. Now, what does that mean? Toxic masculinity creates this box and this grip where real men have to be stoic and aggressive and never show vulnerability. And, you deal with these paradigms of, and I know, Brandon, you're probably going to reckon, you're not man enough. You're not man enough. Because, so from a trans perspective, the people that take this are trans guys. Trans men take a visceral amount of the real man gatekeeping problem. Oh, and my cat's locked in her room. Hold on. Hold that thought.
Yeah, the poor cat.
Mine are both
he-
sleeping. So
my dog's sad because it's the first day of school today, so the kids are away. But
oh yeah.
but I went right into like dad mode where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go get something to prepare food because I know they're gonna be hungry. I'm a crock pot guy, so I just like make the crock pot so they can come home and eat their like 2 pounds of meat, and then they can kind of relax because they're just at that growing stage and they burn so much energy. But that kind of fits into our toxic masculinity discussion because I go out there and I get dinner ready so the kids can devour something when they get here.
So from a trans guy perspective, so trans men, so female to male transitioning individuals, they get that you're not man enough, you want to sign male at birth, or, and this is really bad, and I've seen this before, they overcompensate by trying to prove their masculinity. Meanwhile, from my perspective, trans women, I get shit for abandoning my malehood. And I get shit for, abandoning my male privilege. And did I understand that I had male privilege before I started to transition? And I'm abandoning that. And do I understand why that's bad? And so, how do we solve this?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to take the first go at it there, Brandon? Or your thoughts?
Um, yeah, growing up in a rural farm family, I mean, I read a piece by you, Walter, not too long ago about you were talking about growing up in a farm family and how kids are kind of basically kind of child labor,
Yep.
forced to start doing a lot of farm work and stuff at a very young age.
Hmm.
You know, I was my dad tried to tried to teach me how to disc a field one time, and it was long before I turned 16. I had no experience driving or a car or anything, and he put me on this
Yeah.
tractor with a disc behind it and
Yeah.
just trying to tell
Yeah.
me how to do this. And he was not a good teacher. He
Yeah.
was impatient and couldn't understand why I couldn't get this, the first time, this, well, you can't do it. He would just very impatient. And I just got sick. I
Yeah.
couldn't, I was so overwhelmed with anxiety and everything. And we didn't have a good relationship anyway.
Yeah.
And for him to try to force me to do the manly work at only, I don't even know how old I was, but it was several years before I even was old enough to drive legally. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's kind of, as far as how do we stop it, how do we change it? I I feel like the the adults who have that mindset now, it's almost impossible to change that mindset. You know what I mean? It's like, I think it needs to start
Yeah.
at younger generations, at teaching these kinds of things in school. Uh, I don't know, because at home, you might get this toxic masculinity, but you've got to counter that somehow. And teaching these like moral lessons in school, and teaching that what masculinity doesn't mean, being this idea of being a man, is
Yeah.
is not right.
Yeah. And what you're saying is great because it's the set you up to fail thing that they do. These patriarchs. It's the same thing as like you ask the man to wash the clothes and he destroys them all. So he's like, I'm incompetent. And
Mm,
and then you have the adult who's like, he could have set you up. He could have tried you out on a four-wheeler or something first, so you knew how to drive something instead of
yeah,
put you
yeah,
behind the wheel of like a $250,000 tractor or whatever it was. That then you destroy, and then he could just be. And it's almost like they want you to fail just so that you recognize their greatness. That's baked in here. But like that whole like the real man mythology is something that's always been like dominating. We used to play King of the Hill, which was just
yeah,
awful.
yeah,
We had an asphalt parking lot. They put a big pile of snow, and people would just spend the whole time throwing other kids off there. And I'm like, I don't want to throw other kids off. Second, I don't want to be thrown, so I don't want to play this game. But then you're just in this weird limbo of like, how are they even going to represent you? So then you're just like, well, then their first thing is like, well, I guess I'm going to have to beat him up for being too, not willing to play the boys' games. We have to beat him up. So I was telling like I got really good at just kicking kids in the groin when I was like in second or third. Kids would come in, I just kick them in the groin. I would hit them right, and it's just like they learned pretty quick not to do that. And I was
yeah,
really good at it.
yeah,
I was like dropping all these kids by kicking them in the groin, but it's sort of like it's pretty brutal that you have to go through a situation like this. And this is just because I made the stance to just not participate in like this ritual of abuse. And then I was forced to be abusive anyway. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't think we're gonna get through your whole list, Wendy, but
No, no, no.
this is all good
I
stuff.
mean, but that's the point. And the point that you both raise in this is that that's the solution to the problem. So how do we solve this? You blow the fucking box up. Just
Yeah,
blow the box up. And here's why. Because masculinity should be about character, not your chromosomes or how much you can fucking bench press or how fast you can drive a car or if you can drive a stick or not. So the whole rationale that masculinity is a performance art of whatever kind of prowess is bullshit because at its core, it really should just be about the character of the person.
I
And
I think it's sorry. I think it's like how much you can dominate, you know? It's like men have to dominate. And it's just sort of like and you see it in like these fail videos where like a groom and a bride decide to chest bump, but then the man's like got to knock her over, and it's like, God damn it! The rule of a wedding is to not knock over the bride. Just do nothing other than that. Just don't knock over the bride, and you've done pretty. And that's the other thing where it's like I feel it's kind of unfair because the bar is set so low for me to be a good husband. You know, it's like I have to put it on challenge myself to be even better because it's like if I just rely on being better than every other husband I see, it's just that's still not good enough for what my daughters deserve. You know.
well, and to your point about throwing people off one side or the other, that feeds directly into the second point, which is the violence problem.
Yeah.
And so,
Okay.
from a trans intersectionality, toxic masculinity, violence issue, as a trans woman, I have experienced violence before. I've been in a public space where a guy got into my face and said, "You're a fucking guy and you offend my heterosexual, cisgendered sensibilities, and I'm going to fuck you up." Now, the handful of times that's happened, I've had to remind that person that, hi, I'm 6'6" and I weigh about 250. That's not going to end well for you, even if my strength levels have gone down because I'm injecting estrogen into my body every day. And so we have men who are steeped in toxic masculine culture and they see trans existence one way or the other as a threat to the whole worldview. And so um, those guys treat gender identity like a personal attack. They see someone like me in a dress and heels and makeup and a hairpiece and think, that could be me.
Yeah, and they see it in gay guys too, and I know it's even worse for you. But seeing somebody who's more effeminate, um, who doesn't fit their ideal of the male, you know, it doesn't happen just at home with my dad. It's perpetuated by your peers who are also raised by other people like your dad. You know, you go to school and you have the pull up bar. You have to do so many pull ups or do so many push ups or whatever. And then if you can't do that, you're not as masculine. You're not as
Yeah.
manly as they are. So that kind of that competition, kind of the uh, uh, like you were saying, of the king of the hill kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's yeah. If you're if you're sensitive or if you're more effeminate, if you're friends with a lot of girls, that I think they kind of see that as a threat. You know, it's like you're not supposed to be that way. You're not supposed to be friends with girls. You're not supposed to be effeminate and sensitive and get along with them as your equal. You know,
Yeah.
that's not what a man is supposed to do. They're supposed to be the dominant species.
I wonder because I always get back to the idea that attraction or arousal is such a confusing kind of concept. And when you sit and think about it, it's like how a person dresses and their mannerisms are what it doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. It's these mannerisms that I find attractive. It's the way they're dressed I find attractive, a certain style. So I think, it's like, I'm happily married and everything. So it's like, oh, that person's beautiful. And it's like, could be a man, it could be a woman. But then you see these other people that then they feel kind of a sense of arousal and then they realize, oh, I'm looking at a man. And now they're like, it's their own issue, and they're just like, and then they have to respond with violence when they can't just say, "Look, this arousal I'm feeling is fine. I just, I'm not." It's like some of it's the other day. You watch a love scene, you don't know what body part is from the man and what body part is from the woman. You're looking at a love scene, right? So it's sort of like there's these levels. Like if you could just chill out and say, "Look, I like what I'm looking at. Let's have a good time." That's fine. But if you feel you have to go kill something because you get sense of arousal you don't control, then that's when we have a problem, I guess.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. The solution to the violence problem is to just call the violence. Guys
Mm.
need to work to call out their peers' transphobic and homophobic violence. I mean, gay bashing and queer bashing in the 80s were a huge problem. I mean, huge. And and then that goes right into the third point, which was the trap panic defense. Did you know about the trap panic defense, Brandon?
Oh,
The crying game.
okay, yeah. Okay.
I didn't know that the girl I took home was actually a guy. And so the toxic idea that trans women are deceiving straight men into their, that taps into their worst masculine insecurity. I guess from a gay perspective, when you come on to a straight guy, it hits that same nerve. And so the whole framework of that is to treat trans women and trans guys as predators, and straight men as the victims. I beat up that trans person because they were deceiving me and I was the victim,
Yeah.
even though they didn't harm me in any way.
It makes me think. I don't know if you guys. Well, I'm sure you probably remember Matthew Shepard.
Yes.
Back in the 90s.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I do.
Okay.
He was a young man in college. He got a ride with a couple of. There was three. I believe it was three straight guys who they gave him a ride home. It's not exactly clear why he got into the car with them. It kind of came out later that one of them might have pretended like he was interested in Matthew, and they knew Matthew was gay. He was out, and they got him into their vehicle and took him out in the middle of nowhere and beat him almost to death,
Right.
and left him out there to die.
Yeah.
And he was found later. He was still alive at the time he was found, but he ended up dying in the hospital. But later, one of the defenses was, well, he came on to us. They were
gay panic. It was gay panic.
Yeah, they were blaming him basically, and it's not clear if he actually did, but that was their defense at least. Because they obviously they knew he was gay.
Right. In the
And it was just
in the trans spectrum, we had the same thing with Brandon Tina. Boys Don't Cry. That movie is a really difficult movie to watch. It really is. But the thing the virtue that movie extols is the fact that the guys that killed Brandon Tina knew that Brandon was assigned female at birth. And they dragged him out into the woods. And just like Matthew Shepard, beat him within an inch of his life and left him to die. And that movie hugely quantifies the toxic masculinity and the gay panic defense, which is bullshit, complete bullshit.
Yeah. I think these things are it's horrible stories to hear. And those go on top of, the women that are murdered. The numbers are just terrible there. And it just underscores the unhealthy sexuality we have in the United States. This isn't something I haven't looked as much in the numbers, but in other places, like American men, I don't know, maybe have you had the experience in other countries or experienced other cultures and seen what are your
Yeah.
thoughts there? Like how that compares to the United States?
So, I mean, externally, um, and it really kind of varies by age group. Like if you go into Europe, in Europe, there is a healthy male female balance. And so toxic masculinity, as we know it today, is largely an American phenomenon. And let's be fair, in Asian Pacific cultures, dominant male society happens. Japan was like that well into the 70s and 80s. Um, male dominance over females, and I historically over the last 6,000 years or whatever, um, male dominance over female individuals has been a constant motif. If you've read any of the biblical deconstruction articles I've written, the Bible is rife. It's completely rife with it. Um, Outside of the one or two, like Ruth and Naomi thing, where Ruth was very clearly a masculine lesbian and told Naomi that she would love her more than than King David loved any of his wives. There were contrasting moments there, but that's like a motif that's existed for a long time. And so, externally, like if you go to Europe, you don't tend to see guys doing toxically,
Yeah.
toxically masculine shit to their women. And actually, we talked about this at dinner on Sunday because we went out to dinner for my birthday on Sunday, and so uh, my middle child Gizmo was like, "Well, aren't there matriarchal societies?" And the answer to that question is yes. There are actually matriarchal tribal societies that, by the way, don't treat men as the lesser sex.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I I wanted to add when I was in Peru, it's just the violence wasn't there, and a lot of it is maybe because there was, there's homophobia, but it wasn't going to result in violence. And then, but it's in the United States, like in Peru, men are a lot more inclined to just be physical, like give you a hug or a touch.
yeah,
And I remember when I moved there, I was just like at first, because I'm a sensitive person, and it was like going through life without like at this distance because you're afraid you're going to get attacked if you demonstrate affection, but at the same time you're dying because you need that human connection. That's sort of the thing you're at. So I remember just going into Peru and having girls would kiss you on the cheek to say hello. Nothing other than that. And after a couple months of that, it's sort of like you felt like just a release of just like this thing building up. And in the United States, sexuality is so weaponized for control. It's this control mechanism, and the religion has a big part of this, where they act like there's something wrong with you for wanting to show physical affection. And they know damn well that these are natural human reactions, and that's they know we're going to be like that, so they can lecture us on it. And that's why you get in these positions where a person is fun. They're so desperate for any kind of human connection, and then they meet somebody and they touch and they're like, okay, that's fulfilled. And then they're like, oh no, what have I done? And then they have to kill this person. And this is the United States cultivates this. And this is the thing, like you're saying, we have to dismantle. But I don't know if there's anything more toxic than that whole scenario.
well, that's the basic biology argument. And so that argument is the end of the argument that says biology is destiny. You were born a
Biology.
man. You will always be a man. So toxically masculine culture loves to hide behind what they deem basic biology to avoid examining gender complexity and orientation complexities. It's easier to say a penis equals a man than question why that matters so much to them. I mean, at the kindergarten level of understanding of biology, ignores the science about hormones and brain structure and whatever. If you ask a kindergartner, is that a man or a woman? The kindergartner is going to go, that's a woman. It might not. It might not be. And so there's that dichotomy that says, why should that matter? You know, it really, it shouldn't. And let's be fair. I was a person who was born with additional anatomy. When I was born, I was born with a very low testosterone level, so two digit number, under 20.
Mm-hmm.
And then later in life, I found out that I had an extra piece of female anatomy in my body.
Hmm.
Does that make me a man?
Yeah.
I mean, versus I know intersex people and other trans people who were born with a uterus and yet outwardly have male genitalia. And so, you know, how do you fix that? That's just education. If you ask some dumbass redneck, I live in Georgia. If you go up to Rome, Georgia, and you ask some dumbass farm boy redneck if he knows what an intersex person is, he's going to look at you and go, well, I don't know what the fuck that is. Is that one of them faggot people? That's what that is.
Yeah. I think what to me is so heartbreaking is I think we have this rigid viewpoint that's imposed on us by the toxic masculinity of the United States. Is there anybody who feels comfortable with their sexuality in this country? You know, I know I was always like, yeah, because from the very first age when they're just like, they're just attacking you for nothing and just like, I just want to give my buddy a hug, and it's just like, so then you have to go and wonder about these things because you're getting so much hostility and it's just nothing is talked about openly. Like they say, it's either this or this, and there's nothing, and they're like, there is nothing else. How many people fit into that? Like of the, nobody does. Nobody fits that. So that's why it's sort of like you get to this point where why are so many people? I guess it's that status quo, where it's just like, well, I turned a blind eye to all the hardships I have to endure and just pretend like everything is all right. Once we open up and realize everybody's in that same boat, it gets a lot easier.
One thing I real
That's actually a Brandon question.
oh
Yeah.
I well I was just gonna say one thing I have noticed, at least in my area, is that it's getting better. I mean, it's better now than it was when I was growing up. I see young guys that are okay with giving each other hugs and saying "I love you, man," or
Yeah.
kind of in a more masculine way, but at least they're saying it. Where I've never heard that from any of my peers growing up. So
Yeah.
I see some progress as far as expressing emotion and being okay with physical contact, but
Yeah.
it, there's definitely farther to go.
Well, I'm just talking specifically about the sexuality sexual insecurity and the
Yeah,
spiral that causes, because toxic masculinity makes guys completely terrified of being gay.
yeah, yeah,
And so that either turns into fetishization or abject violent rejection. So like, I mean, I knew gay guys who dated straight men, and it was not a fun experience for those people because, like, if they were out in public, they were straight. But when
Okay.
they got home and the bedroom door shut, then
yeah.
it was a different story. But
Well, I see on Grinder nowadays. I mean, I was on Grinder several years ago, and looking at comparing then to now, I see a lot more guys on Grinder who are specifically looking for either trans woman or trans female, or trans male, either
right.
one. And that's something I didn't see much of just a few years ago. So, and I don't know if it's, well, like you were saying, maybe more of a fetish. And I don't know about if those guys, because there's a lot of guys that go on Grinder who are identify as straight, but they want to explore. Yeah, I know.
You know what though?
fetishization.
That's actually good though, because I think it's when I was in Germany at an Oktoberfest, it was like there was this fad going on where they were more openly experimenting with just kissing each other at the Oktoberfest, and it's just sort of like it's like I've been thinking about that, and it's like the United States, country of freedom, but you're never encouraged to like explore your sexuality that way, right? And it's a little bit, and maybe it's unfair to say, that was that one particular reference I had was in Germany, so it was more open there. But it's like people say, "What was the day you knew you were straight?" And it's like, well,
Right.
that's always just assumed. We never, and it is a little bit. If we could just get to the point where it's normalized to just explore your sexuality, it's like, okay, I'm not into this. I tried it. I don't like it. I'm gonna do something else. It's just like, I tried it. I did like it. That's good. And so it's sort of like that's just kind of like learning as a human being, right?
I
Part
think
of it.
that's entirely an American euphemism.
Yeah.
Many
What
people
Yeah.
is?
that I have known outside of the American substruct have a much broader sense of sexuality from,
Yeah.
from a perspective that's like, oh, yes, when I was in college, I
Yeah,
dated women and it was fun and
yeah,
exciting. But now I am married to a man. And it's like, like when French people did that back in the, you know, 17 and 1800, holy shit.
yeah. Oh yeah,
De Acosta, the girl that bedded down Marlene Dietrich. I mean, that woman, like, she would tell people, I like, if you're married to a guy, I can get you into my bed and you'll never want to leave it. And that was back in the that was back in the
yeah,
20s and 30s. I mean, that was a thing, you know. The
Yeah. America is so prudish.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
we don't like to. They don't like to see body parts, or anything. It's like how many nude beaches are there
yeah,
in America? Have you? I don't know, I, but not many, if any. But yeah, it's so funny how strict people are with body parts and sexuality. They don't want to, like when I was growing up,
yeah,
going through sex education. We had to have a note from our parents, that we were allowed to go through sex education and stuff. And there were a couple people who had to go to the library while we were doing sex education because their parents did not want them being involved. Now, I
yeah,
think my parents wanted me to go through it because they didn't want to talk about it at home. Like,
yeah.
we would rather the school deal with that than us talk about it. That was we did not talk about that. We did not talk about sexuality at home or in church, or that was that was an off limit topic.
right.
It's
I wonder because there's an element here. It's the subjugation of women. Because there's toxic masculinity where you're like, you have to sit here like this, and you can't, because it's sort of like when I think of my wife who can, she can light up a room and she comes in and she'll dance, and if there's a man in there trying to talk, none of the other men are going to look at the man trying to talk because she's in there having fun and doing this, and so it's like the only way for men to have power in the United States is to just sort of like tone down, it's like the whole cover them completely up from head to toe, so they're not able to engage in the essential human part of us where we're able to have that connection on that other level because and then you just like toning down our relationships like with other men. Because, when you fall in love, there's just that connection there that's beyond what you can do with words. And it's just something that you'll remember gestures and moments through your whole life, and we just want to try to like push that all aside so that a couple like boring dudes can have control over everything and have their dumb opinions heard, or they can fail to teach us how to drive a tractor to disc a field. It's just sort of like it's sort of weird how all this stuff does kind of start to come together, but live
Well,
a little.
that's the dominance hierarchy. That's one of the reasons why, as a trans person, I as a trans person, I don't know how exactly I'm doing this. I've been told this before though. You threaten male dominance. I don't know how the fuck it's
Okay.
just I don't know how the fuck it's just me, but trans existence challenges the rigid hierarchy toxic masculinity depends on. Real men are on top, weak women are on the bottom, and everyone else just doesn't exist. And so, I you have to dismantle that hierarchical thinking. The problem is that only 1% or slightly over 1% of the American population are trans persons like me. And so that's not enough.
That's the way evil always works, though, where they pick a group that's a small group so that they can commit atrocities against that group, and most people don't hear it, and all they hear is the propaganda, the narrative that they control, or they act and they spread in various sacred institutions, and they act like they're doing this important work, and that's then the mass of human beings are they don't get to see the truth of what's happening. I think that's a big part here.
Yeah, well,
That I see that in immigration too.
that feeds into emotional constipation. Like when you were growing up, Brandon, did you experience emotional constipation?
Oh yeah, I heard all the time, stop crying.
Okay. Oh yeah, okay, there you go.
Quit crying.
Yeah.
It was bad to show emotion and anger too, I guess, in some ways. You weren't supposed to get out of control with your anger, but also with love, with affection. My parents didn't hug me, didn't kiss me. I don't remember getting hugs from my parents growing up. I didn't remember them telling me I love you.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like if I didn't get that from them, then I guess it was not okay for me to tell other people or to show that affection toward others.
Right.
And learning by example,
And I knew I started to in some ways like suppress emotions because it's sort of like, well, you don't get worked up for things because you know you're going to get disappointed. But then you
Yeah.
just go through your whole life just not feeling, and that builds up though. I mean, that's the thing. And Bill Burr just had his routine where he's like, men keel over dead at age 50. And he's like, this is why. It's like that task you're not allowed to ever get in touch with your own emotions. It wasn't until I watched Inside Out where they explained it's like if you sit down and cry, you feel better afterwards. You don't have to understand. And honestly, watching that movie was the first time I'm like, oh, that makes a little bit of sense. So I'll go ahead and stop forcing myself. I'll just go ahead and cry now. Now my wife's like, okay, too much now. But it's like, no, but it especially if you're dealing with depression and stuff, it's like, fuck it. If this will work. Because when you're down in that deep, dark hole and you don't have any way out, it's like, I'll try anything. I got to get out of here. I'll cry a little bit. If that makes me feel better, fine. I'll put aside all the things I've heard.
I intensely love that movie for the iterative of that movie explaining emotions. But then in addition to that, my favorite comedian of all time, Louis Black, is one of the voices as
Oh,
the as the anger character.
yeah.
And he's classic. But yeah, I mean the problem with emotional constipation is that shit builds up over time, layer over layer over layer over layer. And here's what happens. That's how that's what causes the violence problem. I become an emotional punching bag for male insecurity and male emotional constipation because they can't grasp dealing with their own emotions. And so when it all builds up and they get in front of me and they're like, oh, I fucking hate you. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
Well, you were mentioning
Somebody
depression and sorry.
Go ahead.
You were talking about depression, and that's something that to my family growing up in a religious household didn't exist really. I mean, it wasn't you didn't depression was something you just got over. You need to be happy. You need to pray more. You need to go to church, and they didn't understand depression or didn't want to. They just thought it was just being sad. Everybody gets the blues. Everybody gets sad. That's not what depression is, And that's kind of goes along with other mental health issues. It wasn't dealt with.
And that's like what we were talking about before. When they set these parameters of where acceptable life is, the patriarch's here and he can never be questioned. And and all these others, and then there's two gender. They said all these things that are just absurd, and then you find I just can't live within these parameters. Then the problem has to be you, right? Because it's like if they're
Yeah.
so rigid and they don't look at the nuance and the complexity of life, and they don't accept and appreciate it, you have to suffer for it. Because if you're not fitting in, that's where the problem must be. And I just don't understand why people can't
Because
recognize it's not working.
there shouldn't be an issue with a man
Yeah.
having emotional intelligence. There's nothing wrong with having emotional intelligence. If we normalized males having emotional intelligence and we normalized males going to therapy, the emotional constipation issue would go entirely away.
And that's
Yeah.
something also that has gotten a little bit better. I mean, more people are accepting that depression is a real thing, and
Yeah.
actually seeking help for it. But it's
Yeah.
still not,
And
just like the bullying, the toxic masculinity. It's still not eliminated, but it's
yeah.
at least better than it was.
But then there's the expectation too, where these men who have all these issues, then they just expect their wife to handle it. Like that's another marital duty for somehow they get that and then you just forget that it's like everybody has problems that they're dealing with. I'm not necessarily equipped to handle all those problems. That willingness to seek help, like from well, that's the thing too, where we constantly erode our respect for experts, and that's been just an ongoing thing where it's like the expert tells you something that contradicts that established narrative that leads only to misery, and so then they attack the experts rather than embrace this understanding.
Right. And
There's so many things that connect with it.
my parents would, like, the only way they would accept any kind of um, uh, counseling or a therapist is if it was a Christian counselor or therapist. They had to be rooted in the
Yeah,
Bible,
yeah, yeah,
because that aligned with their line of thinking.
yeah. The
Does that
more
mean you
doors you
had to go
close, the
through
less chance.
conversion therapy, Brandon? I'm just going to
What
ask.
what was that?
Did you have to go through conversion therapy?
Oh
No,
boy.
thank goodness. That would be horrible. And what you were talking about earlier, Walter, about you can't act a certain way. You can't.
Yeah,
You don't have the limp wrist. You can't put your
yeah.
hand on your hip and that kind of thing. That's that's gay.
Can't cross your legs. Yeah,
Right. Yeah, you can't cross your legs a certain way. You have to put it like your ankle
yeah.
on your knee, not.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah.
See, the
But
problem
I
with
get a
that,
lot of that
though,
too. I'd get a lot of it just because I just like to be. I like to laugh about things. I like to be flamboyant. So I'd get it. Not to the level you guys had to endure, but also criticisms and you're like, you do. I was often fearful about, fearful for my safety in various situations. It wasn't when I went to Peru, it was the first time I'm like, because that level of just base violence wasn't there. And it's just like, God, like just because every time you go out for a drink when I was in college, it's like, well, maybe there'll be a fight tonight. It's like I'm just out here to dance with somebody, and meet somebody maybe. And it's sort of like I don't want to have to get into a fight with some dude who's so sexually repressed that he has to take it out on me somehow. I don't want to dance with you, buddy. I want to dance with her.
well, from the parental perspective, that's the generational gap issue. So, I mean, Brandon, I hate to say this, but your parents marinated in toxic masculinity for years.
What?
Yeah. And so, like, I mean, my mom and dad, my mother was, we're not going to talk about that, but my dad was like, he's bluer blooded than most people I know. But his parents, my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, was a brigadier general in the Air Force. Guess what? That meant that I
Yeah.
came out as queer. That did not go well because he was still around. That did
Oh,
not. That did not. No. Oh shit. No. Um.
Now.
So from a trans perspective, as much from a gay perspective, the generational gap is huge, and it's a huge problem.
when my when my daughter was born, I was holding her, and I can't remember if I actually changed her diaper right then. But my grandma came over. She's like, "Oh, I think she said her dad or whether she meant her husband. She's like, he would have never even held the baby. And just like, wow. I'm like, well, you're missing out on, and just that aspect too. And that's something because it's like having when my daughter was born, it was like I want her to sleep on my chest every day, just to have that connection. And a lot of that, I've always worked from home, so I had that advantage. I'm like, okay, I'll be here and and it takes that extended time. So maybe this toxic masculinity is designed to just prevent any kind of human bond from forming on any level, man, woman, man, child, and so you get these men are just completely, it's like the old expectation for what men should do. You're not even allowed to bond with your own children. How's that gonna work for anybody, And it's like I've always been my whole life has been just do the opposite of what everybody else I ever knew did. I'll just do the opposite, and it's like walking backwards through my life, like, oh, that's the wrong way. Go backwards, and it's worked out pretty good.
I had
That's
a
kind of what
friend.
I did with.
Oh,
Oh,
go
sorry.
on, Rick.
Well, I was just gonna say that's kind of what I did with my dad. I did the opposite of
Yeah,
everything that he did, or I felt the opposite way of that he did about everything. I mean, he was racist, he was homophobic, he was not
yeah,
affectionate or loving, and I went completely the opposite direction. I knew from a very early age that racism was wrong, and I
yeah,
I was open with kind of being friends with girls, and of course, I got teased anytime I was friends with a girl. Oh, is that your girlfriend?
yeah,
No, just I just like hanging out with them. It's like, oh
yeah,
my gosh, it was, and that part was, I feel like a part of a toxic masculinity too. You couldn't be friends with a girl unless you were attracted to them. If you were a guy,
So
it couldn't happen that way.
when Gizmo was a baby, I would get up with Gizmo at night and I would feed her and rock her back to sleep. And the reason for that was when I was much younger, I had a friend that grew up in the Nantes region of France. And I used to spend weeks with him and his family all the time. Uh, uh, Fran's his name. And so, like, the first time I ever went to his house, his dad walked up to me, gave me this huge hug, and then smooched me on both cheeks. And he was just this jovial and happy person that I I couldn't grasp. Well, they had twins. And so I was a teenager and like in the middle of the night, we'd be playing games and shit or whatever. The baby would start crying, he would get up and he would go into the room and he'd take care of the two kids while his because she's breastfeeding two babies during the day or whatever, and that's exhausting.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so, yeah, so when I had my own child, I was like, you, you go to sleep, I'll take care of this. And so
yes,
my child and I developed a very maternal bond.
yeah.
So when I came out as a trans woman, Gizmo looked at me and said, Mom, finally, I've been calling you a mom for a long time. Now I
Oh,
really mean it because
nice,
that's how it's supposed to be.
nice.
So yeah, I mean it's a cultural shift, but it's one that needs to
In
happen.
part, yeah, and because everybody has dual wage earners now, and in the past, it's like you raising a kid is not easy, and somebody does have to sleep. I mean, one person can't be expected to go do a job and then come home and take care of the baby. It's not possible anymore. So, I
No,
mean, like the greed of toxic masculinity that has made our culture so cruel and has squeezed everything from us has also set the seeds of its own demise because you literally can't function in this world anymore. It's not possible unless, and the caregiver role, yeah, and that idea of it being, eh, eh, I feel bad. I'm so grateful I had that opportunity and insisted on it to be a person who had this, the care. It was my job. I don't say that that was her job and then I helped. It was my job as much as her job. And just the opportunity to, yeah, forge those bonds with your own kids. The reality was, it's like basically everybody else I've ever met in my life was an asshole, and the kids were not. So I just wanted to hang out with them. It's like until I screwed them up, so they became like me. But they've turned out to be delightful. They actually turned me more into like them. So maybe that's the lesson we should take from this.
Well,
I
I
mean,
see my parents now being a lot better, a lot more affectionate to their grandkids than they ever were with
Yeah,
us as kids. Yeah, and I
people
saw that
do.
with my grandmother too, because my mom grew up as a similar way. She wasn't shown a whole lot of physical affection by her mother, and I think she kind of perpetuated that. But as my grandma got older, I think she probably realized her mistake, you know,
Yeah,
and I think my mom did too. In fact, she told me once when I was an adult that she felt bad. She kind of apologized for not being as affectionate as she should have been when I was
yeah,
younger, when I was growing up, because you know, sometimes that realization doesn't hit you until much later,
yeah.
and it's almost too late.
Well,
that's
babies are just little
common.
walking hugs. Yeah,
That's common human psychology. It is
baby.
common human psychology to get to a point in your parental
Yeah,
relationship or much later in your life, you tell
Yeah,
your child, I know I should have done better and I didn't.
yeah,
that's good. Not everybody gets to that point either, though. And some people just dwell on their insistence that they were perfect, and that's usually the end of the conversation there. But I don't. Yeah, little babies. They're little walking hugs. You scoop them up, and anybody who misses out on that, my heart goes out to them. Right.
Yeah.
Comments. Oh, guys, good conversation. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for bringing me in to this today. We can keep going. I got time, but I appreciate the trust you showed to just invite me to have this talk.
No, I mean, like I said, talking about gender and sexuality, intersectionality is, um, it's a conversation that people need to have because there's enough effect over not recognizing that intersectionality that's causing problems. But it's been something that's been around for a long time. Like I said, back in the 70s and 80s, gay
Yeah.
bashing was a thing. There are still people who take violent and aggressive actions. I mean, for the most part, I can say at 53, the worst I get from people is a dirty look and, and,
Yeah.
and a face. But at my age, I'm literally at a point where I'm just like, I don't give a shit.
Eh,
You're gonna have to do a lot more than that to get under
yeah.
my skin. So
I still get those. I get looks and stuff. If I'm wearing earrings or just I don't know the type of clothes I wear or whatever. When I was at the beach when I was in Maine, I wore kind of a very short, kind of tight shorts to the beach, and I got a couple looks that I think were kind of negative, and I mentioned something to Robin about it, and she said, "Oh, I didn't notice that," and of course she
Um,
wouldn't, but I'm more attuned to that kind of thing, and
yeah. Yeah.
I try to ignore it, but it does still bother me a little bit. I mean, I didn't run back to the house and change or anything, but
Yeah.
I don't notice it as much, but here's what's fun. I have a funny story about this. Whenever it does happen and I don't notice it, invariably my child Charlie is around and
Oh,
Charlie will notice it, and then Charlie will walk up to whoever it is. Do you have a problem with my mom?
yeah,
yeah.
So I'm sort of happy that the younger generation is not afraid to embrace that and try to, you know,
Yeah. I I think it just tell people what I mean, we should be able to plant the seed on what people are missing out on, right? I mean, it's just like, do you enjoy sex? Do you enjoy sexuality? It's like and it's like it's not like a menu with only one item on it. It's like, do you order hamburgers every time you go out? Try something else on the menu is kind of the thing. But I bring it up like the idea of, you know, like when I went to brew and I was just so, you're all tightly wound because you got this Puritan kind of impulse all the time. And it's just sort of like, and then you're like angry. You're like this white man. Oh, why aren't girls interested in me? And then you go out to like a bar and people, you want to dance? No. Why aren't girls interested? And then they come, it's like, wait a minute, like 20 attractive women just came up and asked me to dance. And I'm sitting here being mad that girls aren't interested in me. Maybe if I fucking learned how to dance, then we'd solve all the problems. So in Peru, but in Peru too, like they were so much more open to it, where it was sort of like, oh, we won't make you look stupid. We'll guide you through it. They were so nice about it. Like dancing is this fun cultural thing, and it doesn't even have to extend to the point of like a sexual experience. Just physical contact of dancing, it just takes that burden off you. So yeah, I mean, all these guys that are just out there being angry, go take a dance class, and just get that human contact that way, and then maybe you won't turn around and kill somebody in like some bizarre Puritan induced brainwashed rage that come over you because you've repressed your feelings your whole life.
Oh, one of my most visceral early adulthood experiences was learning to East Coast and West Coast Lindy. And my instructor was a female. And here you'll laugh. You'll laugh when I say this. I should have known I was trans because I couldn't lead for shit. I can't do it. And so she got tired of watching me with my child's mother at the time. She's like, okay, come over here. And then she would dance with me in the class. And she's like, I'm going to lead you, but I'm going to force you to lead the right way or whatever. And I saw her like years later and I told her, I'm trans. And she was like, oh, I knew. Oh, I knew. Yeah.
I only learned how to merengue. I didn't even know. I'd be at the bars and it'd be like a song would come on and I just merengue. And then it was like every now and then the dance move I knew would line up with the song if I got lucky. But they're like, "Why are you doing a merengue? This is a salsa." I'm like, "I know what I'm doing. This sometimes works." So that's the only thing I know how to do. Good times.
Yeah. Walter,
So what's the next?
we should do this
Go
again.
ahead. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. We only got what? How many? What did we get into? 4 out of 10?
Oh no, I hit all 10 of them.
We did all 10. Okay, we got through.
Yeah. I stuck it on that. But I'm gonna republish. I'm gonna publish the 10 steps, in an article spread here probably in the next 2 or 3 days because that it's a but it'll be an intersectional article. But I've been taking notes,
Nice.
so a lot of this discussion is gonna end up there.
Yeah, the whole like the realities of human sexuality. I've got a high school girl now and one in middle school, so I guess I gotta do my research, but look at it from the other side,
Yeah. Be prepared.
Yeah. Oh, they're good. But you know what though? It's like they've had a lot of affection growing up, so I think that makes things a little bit easier too. Because I know too, if you grow up in a state where you're not really felt like you're cared for very much, that kind of leads to getting involved with stuff that's not very good for you. So there's a lot of aspects. More questions.
Yeah, I'm just answering Sonny. Talking about Marcus. The Marcus every day at 5 o'clock, I publish the safety of the bar queer space
Oh,
story, and Marcus is like the I'm invisible bisexual guy, and I love to write him because he's always like I'm just gonna go home to the wife, but the wife doesn't get why I come to a gay bar because I'm bi. She just thinks it's me working some shit out that's gonna go away, and so I'd like to write him with that again the bi invisibility versus bisexual conflict. It's like I mean, I love it here. You guys love me all, and you treat me fairly, and my wife doesn't get it, and so, um, I
Maybe
am,
it's just a phase.
yeah. It, don't worry, I have a
wow.
story coming up about him in like the next week or two. I mean, I've already published it and scheduled it, but the his wife has been to the bar and she gets it, and then he is going to get a boyfriend and then she's going to come back to the bar and there's going to be a conflict. Anyway, it'll be really good. But yeah, the whole purpose of the bar stories is to tell like the entire sexual and gender spectrum perspective. And so that's one of the reasons why I love to write those stories, because I hit all of those.
I just got off a conversation with Arturo Dominguez and Will Fullwood, and we were just talking about racism but just that imposed belief system that's so toxic to us. And this conversation in some ways kind of overlaps. And I think it's because that other conversation's still in the back of my mind. But yeah, that control element. What more powerful way to control people than to make them feel shame over their basic and natural human and beautiful sexuality, right? And yeah, and that shame, that's a powerful emotion too, almost as powerful as love. And so they take it away from us, take away our love by making us feel shame and sad. Why are we letting them do that? That's, I guess, we're trying to have these conversations with people. Why you let them do that to you? So
Because
yeah,
complex emotions are very,
yeah,
very easy to use to control human beings with. They're really
yeah. And they've figured out, like, these evil forces have figured out the mechanism. We sometimes we dismiss them as being foolish, but they've worked out, it's doctorate level and higher how to manipulate and exploit people. So we just have to keep chipping away at it, I guess.
Walter, I agree with you 100%. There's no way around that. We just have to, again, destroy that narrative.
Education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Educate.
Yeah. Give people permission to show a little bit of affection, and stand up for others when they do. I
Yeah,
guess.
I agree.
Start.
With that. I agree.
Oh, well, we're over an hour, so I suppose, yeah. Oh, what a lovely conversation. Again, thank you guys. I appreciate that you had the faith
No,
and bring
thank
me
you for
aboard.
facilitating. I'll facilitate next
Yeah.
time.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good,
I'll do
good.
it next time.
Thanks for
Oh, it's
including
good.
me. I enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Oh, and it's just, I always love this opportunity that Substack gives us to, interact like this and just learn more about these experiences. Everybody shares their experiences, and it's so valuable. So, well, again, thank you guys. Thanks for everybody who joined in. Lovely, lovely talk.
Yes.
We'll do it again. All right. See you next time.